Adam, would you rather time travel backward or forward?
Oh, backward. Do some sports betting on anything I can remember.
How capitalistically shallow. Hans, would you rather travel backward or forward?
Backward. I am currently obsessed with the letters that my great-grandmother wrote to my grandfather in World War II, and I want to meet her. I've only known her through her letters, and I just want to meet her. So backwards.
Oh, that is so much sweeter.
Adam is like, Big Red Machine, Cincinnati's did really good in the 70s. And Hans is like, Grandmama, tell me about it. That is celebrated podcast producer and CityCast contributor Hans Buetow and creative producer Adam Sage. Today we are dusting off a seasonal favorite, snowplow names. We're also going to find out about a lawsuit that the Department of Justice filed against Minneapolis Public Schools. And it's Friday, and we desperately need a win, and we got one. We're going to hear some promising news about student well-being and behavior in Minnesota. Hans, have you ever had the honor of working morning radio?
No, I've done a lot of radio, but I've never done morning radio.
Adam, you've been a kind of podcast all-star for a lot of your career, as well as a teacher. Have you ever done any morning radio?
I've not.
Listen, I've done some morning radio I was woefully unprepared to do morning radio. And the MnDOT naming of snowplows is like manna from the gods, because you've just done everything you can about holidays and coat drives and end of the year and best albums, and you are just bone dry. And then suddenly Jill Riley looks over and is like, what would you name a snowplow? And you go, okay, this morning is good. So MnDOT, you are doing yeoman's work for morning radio. But frankly, this is a pretty cool tradition that's been going on in Minnesota for over a half decade now. And they are inviting the public to name 8 snowplows and encouraging people to submit the most witty, unique, and Minnesota or winter-themed snowplow name ideas. And the parentheses open is like, again, we are not going to do Abolish ice, because I feel like every year that is kind of what people bring up. But, I mean...
This might be its year, though. This might be the year for it.
It's the year for it. What a tragedy.
If you're going to do it any year, this might be it.
Guys, I have a backdoor into how to do a snowplow that feels like Abolish ice that they might actually do. So get ready, strap in. We got an idea. Submissions are open until next Friday, December 19th. You can only submit one name, and I'm going to expect you all to submit the same name on behalf of me. And submissions are limited to no more than 30 characters, no vulgarity. Please keep politics out of the snowplow contest. Not going to happen. Sorry, MnDOT. Past winners will not be considered, and the public is going to vote on their favorites in January. I just want to run over some of last year's winners, which are pretty good. Plowabunga, Anthony Sledwords.
Yes.
Don't You Snow, I Came, I Thaw, I Conquered. That's one of the ones where they weren't just in the rhyming dictionary. They were actually doing some real
really thinking about it.
Yeah. I liked You're Welcome. I thought that was a good one from last year.
And there is a wonderful list over at Racket that Jay Bowler did last year, ranking 50 of the names from this half decade of names. And there's really some gold to look in there. But of course, we got to get into the mix and submit some ideas. So we'll be doing that. Okay, I think I have more ideas than y'all, so I'm going to throw out one.
Okay.
Out, plowed, and proud. Like out loud and proud, but
that's
out
good.
Plowed. Okay, you like that one?
Yeah.
Hans, you got an idea? What's your snowplow idea?
All right, so I make a show about the internet called Never Post, and so I spend a lot of time thinking about stuff from the internet. So I drew this from the internet. So here it is. How many feet can this plow? 6, 7.
Did you check if that's 30 characters?
I didn't. I forgot that was a rule, so we may have to amend it. But YK.
Wow, very internet. Adam, was yours a little more pedestrian, or is it another meme one?
Mine is so much stupider. I just think it'd be funny if a snowplow was called the Lizard. Just a lizard out on the streets of Minneapolis,
I'd like to point out again that Adam is from the 8-year-old desk here at CityCast. Like, all of his ideas are just like, are we getting pizza? Okay. This one is going out to Christy Nome. Snow cane at the press conference.
Okay.
Okay. I think they're going to do that one right away. This one is from the Timberwolves. They had Anthony Sledwords. I got to shout out Dante DiVincenzo, and my favorite national broadcaster, Bomani Jones, calls him White Dante. What if there was a snowplow called White Dante? Okay. It sounds like you guys really like that one.
I think I think there's another sports joke in there somewhere for maybe welcome JJ McCarthy, because he'll be driving snowplows next year.
This one is very local. We had a great launch party with Obi Original. What about Snowby Original? Wouldn't that be?
That's nice.
Yeah. I know everybody in Minnesota loves the Packers. Snow Pack instead of Go Pack. Tumbleweeds. All right.
I can't support Packer propaganda.
Yeah.
Snow
All right.
pack snow.
Plausible deniability.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
100% yes.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'm on board.
All right, and here's the back door. An actual snowplow name from 2021 was No More Mr. Ice Guy. Ooh. Bring it back.
Bring
in
it
this
back.
New climate.
I mean, it is one of the rules, just like I went over characters. You can't use past winners, but
Right.
that's a good exception to make.
I appreciate it, and I'm sure MnDOT will bend the rules to get in hot water in this political environment. So,
MnDOT is known as being at the vanguard of political activism.
let's do something
Absolutely.
edgy with road maintenance. No, this is a fantastic joy to cover this. It has saved many a morning radio show, and it was pretty fun to talk about here on CityCast. You got to have some snowplow ideas. Hans, Adam, and I came up with some B-plussers, but what is your A-plus idea? Send us a voicemail or hit us up on the Twin Cities hotline, 612-217-0637. You might hear those comments in one of our upcoming segments. There's a lot more to discuss. Before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. The U.S. Department of Justice recently filed a lawsuit against Minneapolis Public Schools. Now, this lawsuit is part of an effort on a national level to root out DEI, and you're often hearing exactly those words at the top of articles, news pieces about these things. I just do want to slow down briefly, because when you root out DEI, you kind of think of the reputation of that acronym, but I do want to say what that stands for: diversity, equity, and inclusion. 3 things I am personally not interested in rooting out, but this new lawsuit is certainly worth discussing, especially because it's going to Minneapolis Public Schools. And a lot of the reporting that we're going to be using comes from Max Nestorak at The Reformer. Adam, can you tell us more about this lawsuit?
Yeah. So Trump's Department of Justice has filed this complaint against Minneapolis Public Schools. And I want to start by just contrasting some of the headlines that we've seen in the media with the Department of Justice's press release. So that Reformer article you mentioned is titled, "Trump Admin Sues Minneapolis Schools Over Layoff Protections for Teachers of Color." The Department of Justice says, Justice Department sues Minneapolis Public Schools for racial discrimination against teachers.
Oh, so that's just like the DOJ headline, like on their own website.
That's what the DOJ headline is. The teachers are now the victim of the vicious Minneapolis Public Schools discrimination.
In both cases, we're talking about suing, though. So what is the policy that the DOJ is challenging here?
So the policy is in the Minneapolis Public Schools union contract. I also might say MPS throughout this segment, Minneapolis Public Schools, that requires teachers from underrepresented groups to be skipped over during seniority-based layoffs. Seniority-based layoffs is when they have to do layoffs and they let go the most recent hires first. And this was also part of the union contract in 2022 that the union fought for this policy as a part of their strike in 2022. Policy is specific on that language, underrepresented groups, because they anticipated legal challenges. It's intentionally broad to avoid accusations of race discrimination and other specific discriminations. But the DOJ is arguing that underrepresented groups is just a proxy for race, color, or national origin. And they also, in this case, take issue with MPS's partnership with a nonprofit called Black Men Teach, which places teaching fellows at an elementary school in the district. I think this is such a small thing to include in this lawsuit that it's a nonprofit that's working with a single elementary school here to place black men who are their teaching fellows at the school. And I just want to include a quote from the complaint that I just think makes them sound like such complaining babies. The DOJ said, "Of course, only black men can be Black Men Teach Fellows, so women, whites, Asians, and others need not apply." Like, okay, guys, calm down. One other thing I want to include here is data from the National Center of Education Statistics National Teacher and Principal Survey in 2020 to 2021 school year showed that just 1.3% of teachers in public schools are black men. Think about all of the black male students that just never have a teacher that looks like them. Just how can you go after that? I don't get
I think a corollary is like, how do you protect against it? Like, this feels really emblematic of like a thing we've been seeing, which is just a capriciousness of the federal government. But it feels like, from what you're describing, this was hard won with strikes and a lot of work to get this in place. It seems like they did a lot of work when they put it in place to be broad enough and, inclusive enough to be able to withstand something like this. But now it's under attack. So how is MPS, the Minneapolis Public Schools, justifying the policy? What are they saying in response?
Well, the union contract says the purpose of the policy is to remedy the continuing effects of past discrimination by the district. That's the language they use. But the Department of Justice argues there isn't evidence of past discrimination. And this harkens to a broader strategy in the conservative legal movement to not acknowledge material realities as evidence of discrimination.
That's good. That's well put.
So lawsuits in the South against discrimination are more successful because they point to specific Jim Crow laws that say people of color are not allowed to do this. But when the evidence is that only 20% of the teachers in Minneapolis public schools are people of color, while roughly 2/3 of their students are, then that's apparently not evidence of discrimination. The reality of our world doesn't count to the DOJ here. The Minneapolis public school policy is just seeking to create a more diverse teacher population, as studies have shown time and time again that a diverse teaching corps improves outcomes for students of all races. That last bit I said is a quote from that Reformer article. A diverse teaching corps improves outcomes for students of all races, and that's being attacked.
It is partially being attacked, Adam, because we might say, oh, this is a beneficial thing. It would be a beneficial thing to have an equally representative group of teachers as we have of students. But we are saying we cannot do this through discrimination. And the DOJ is saying this is discrimination. So even if they agree that this would be ideal to do, we can't do it by taking these factors into consideration. I want to be clear. Personally, Sean McPherson thinks we should take these factors into consideration. But I believe the DOJ's argument is no matter what your goal is for the teaching corps to be the most successful, we can't do this through we are going to have people leave at different rates during layoffs based on their participation or representation in an underrepresented group. And I don't know how it's going to play out. I think that ultimately Minneapolis Public Schools might be able to go, this is not strictly a racial thing. We are trying to create a great group of teachers, and this is a justifiable defense to do this at times of layoff. I want to add one thing. This is not saying we have to hire underqualified teachers. These are teachers who got in through regular application process. It's just going, we're going to choose differently as people leave.
We're just going to try to hang on to them and not lay them off.
Adam, can I say something, though, about the thing you said about it being so small, the Black Men Teach program and the teaching fellows, and it being at one school? Mm-hmm. I understand that it's very small, and it seems perhaps a little wrong for something as magnanimous, or as large at least, as the DOJ to go after this single program. If it was a policy I vehemently disagreed with, I don't think I would care how small it was.
That's if
they just said, like, oh, in one school in Chicago, they're not teaching evolution. I would go, I'm sorry, I don't care that it's in school. The defensive going, it's so small. I think it only works on the side of people who agree with the policies. I agree with the policies, so I go, it's so small. If I disagree with the small policies, I would freak out if it was one-room school in Montana.
That's a good point. And I do think the much stronger argument here is just the complete lack of Black male teachers broadly that this nonprofit is trying to remedy.
This is not the first time these positions from Minneapolis Public Schools have come under legal scrutiny. Something happened before with somebody actually from Minneapolis, right, Adam?
Yeah, a city resident named Deborah Clapp, with backing from a conservative legal foundation called Judicial Watch, argued that Clapp was harmed as a taxpayer for having to fund a discriminatory policy. And the Minnesota Supreme Court threw out this case, saying that she didn't have standing, which in court standing means that you are personally harmed. So therefore you get to seek a remedy from this. Like, you can't sue someone on someone else's behalf. Right. And so Minnesota Supreme Court was like, lady, you're not being harmed. We're not going to hear this case. So that's significant because they didn't hear the merits of the case. They didn't weigh in a legal context, is this policy legally sound? So now that the DOJ is bringing the case, they don't have to have standing because they actually have statutory authority to sue any employer for discriminatory policies. So this will be heard in court, and we will see how it goes. I'm just a pessimistic nerd that likes reading about this stuff, so I don't know that my prediction means much, but I don't feel good about it.
Adam, I agree you're a pessimistic nerd, but you aren't just a pessimistic nerd. You are also a pessimistic nerd who taught algebra for a while in a school. Yep. Did you see the disconnect when you, I don't know the student population you taught for, I don't know the teacher population you taught with. Did you see firsthand, how this school or this environment would have benefited with more Black teachers, with more Black male teachers in particular? Anything like that?
Definitely. So I was a public school teacher in Florida, in Orlando. That's why I get so riled up about stuff like this. When I was teaching there, my school was an 80% Hispanic population. And I will tell you, the teaching population absolutely did not reflect that. Luckily, I can speak enough Spanish to teach a math class in English and Spanish. And my Spanish-speaking students were very, very grateful to that. I had some very excellent interactions and relationships with my Spanish-speaking students in particular, that they were underserved in that school. And that's not the fault of the school. That's not the fault of the staff there. Everybody is doing a fantastic job with what they have. But we just need our teaching populations to reflect their student populations for the best possible results for our students.
So Adam, this was settled on by the union in the last contract. Like, is there any bearing that relationship, does the union have any power? Does that affect the dynamics of this engagement at all?
So since the Department of Justice is arguing that this is a violation of the Civil Rights Act, they're going for more that this policy is unconstitutional. So it doesn't matter as much that the union and the school district agreed on this policy if the policy itself is illegal. In my experience with the union stuff, once they go, this is not labor law, this is something that has to do with civil rights, it's like if the two parties that created the contract agreed to it, the union is presumably in lockstep about this because it was their initiative, but it's going to be fought outside of labor law, so there's not going to be a lot of representation from the union.
Yeah, they can't do a lot. Yeah.
While we're speaking of unions, though, I would like to give a gold star to the MPS Teacher Union President, Marcia Howard. There's a lot of great, capable people who are union presidents who don't know how to make a moment on social media. Marcia Howard is not that woman. When the Reformer texted her for a comment, she just replied, #release the Epstein files. This is the same woman who, during the negotiations with Minneapolis Public Schools, said this could have been an email about a meeting where they said you didn't even respond to half the stuff we were asking for. This
woman was walking out out of a 15-hour-long negotiation, and the video is her in the parking lot, and she just opens it going, well, that could have been an email, and God, it was so funny. I love her.
She's good for the rank and file from everything I've heard. I recently worked at Minneapolis Public Schools, but she is just white hot for the, in fact, Snowplow, Marsha Howard, is this
Yeah.
Yeah. Well done, Marsha Howard, in that moment. We want to hear from you. What do you think about this lawsuit? How do you think it'll end up? Send us a text or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast Twin Cities hotline, 612-217-0637. You might hear your comments in one of our upcoming mailbag segments. There's more to discuss, and before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. It is Friday, and we need a win, but also the future needs a win. I want to point out that everybody on this podcast today chose to time travel backward, right? Like, this is an opportunity where you might go like, oh, what's life going to be like in 30 years? Adam is just betting on the Yankees from the 1980s. Hans Buetow is hanging out with his grandma.
Yeah.
I would travel backwards as well. There is so much anxiety about the future, and a lot of it has to do with the children. I got 2 kids, and I am very worried because I read and I see everyone talking about the difficulties that young people are facing today and the prediction that it's going to get worse. That's really dominated the conversation for so long. But there's a Minnesota student survey that has some data-driven good news. This is coming from reporting by Alyssa Chen at The Reformer, and our own Hans Buetow has the details.
Yeah, Sean, I'd like to file this one, if possible, under the kids might be okay. Like, just cautiously optimistic. So we're returning to The Reformer, and we're returning to education in Minnesota to talk about the 2025 Minnesota Student Survey. All right, let me give you just some background on what this thing is, because I had not heard of it before I read about this. So it's run by the Minnesota Department of Corrections, Education, Health and Human Services, and Public Safety. So it's a joint effort by all of them. They've been running it since 1989, every 3 years, which is cool because it means that we have this historical data to compare what the results are to how we have been doing. We can see trajectories, which means 3 years. Last time it was done was 2022. So this is 2025 data, which just came out on Tuesday of this week, on December 9th. So what is it? Well, it monitors the grades 5, 8, 9, and 11, so middle through high school, across the state. It's statewide, and it's all voluntary. The responses are voluntary and anonymous. The questions might be different for each of the age groups, but it gives us a sense of how the kids are doing on things like tobacco use, alcohol use, other drug use, nutrition, what's their physical activity, their sexual behavior, school safety, how they're feeling about mental health, relationships, academic participation. A lot of different categories are included. And the questions run from like the very practical. So there's a question in there that says, during a typical week, how often do you participate in activities outside of the regular school day? They have experiential questions. So like, have you ever experienced people using guns to threaten or hurt others in person? And then they have all these introspective questions also, like thinking back to the last 30 days, how much do you agree or disagree? I sometimes feel sad without knowing why. So it's a wide range of questions that it asks.
I am wildly nervous to find out the results, but we put this in as a win, so I'm guessing that there's some conclusion. So, like, Hans, like, you gave me a lot of details. Like,
yeah,
what's the thrust of it?
Yeah. So the overall is very positive.
All right.
Yeah, this is the win that we needed. So the press release that accompanied it says that the students report, quote, stronger connections to their schools and improvements in overall physical and mental health and well-being. That's kind of awesome. Yeah. And it's actually pretty expansive what categories that improvement seems to fit under. So it goes on to say that the improvements were seen in school climate, bullying, out-of-school activities, healthy eating, mental health, substance use, connections with school and family, and many other topics. So it seems like universally the numbers in 2025 are up from 2022. So yay.
Yeah, that's great. It's up across the board. Are there any specific bright spots of specific categories?
It is really good to go through and just kind of look at the data as to how stuff has improved in academics and all of the other spaces. But I really want to highlight the specifics of mental health and how that has changed, because I've been thinking a lot about that in terms of how the internet relates to them. do the show about the internet called Neverpost, and we talk a lot about, I've done a couple of stories now about the moral panics involved in the thoughts about kids. We've been hearing, like Sean said, a ton about the mental health of kids. So within the survey, we get some actually really encouraging numbers in terms of student mental health. Quote, the percentage of 11th grade students considering suicide was at its lowest in more than a decade.
That's amazing.
Huge. That's huge, right? Like, this is a lot of what we're talking about with all of the COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act, with all of this legislation, the banning the social media, the phones and stuff, is directed at this sort of like self-harm / suicide stuff, and to know that it's declining in this way. Another example that is parallel is depression. So the Reformer compared this year's to the last few years. So in 2019, 47% of 11th graders reported that they felt down or depressed. Pandemic hits. 2022, that number goes from 47 to 54. 22 to 2025, down to 40%. 54, we went down 14% in that question. Anxiety is also down 10% from 70% of juniors in 2022, now saying 60% of them are reporting anxiety in 2025. And I want to point out one very specific question. I think that there's an emotional intelligence crisis in this country, probably the world. And so I was really, in looking through the questions, heartened to see that this question was even asked, where they said, in general, how does each of the following statements describe you? I am sensitive to the needs and feelings of others, which just warms my heart. And then you see that 34.5% of the kids responded very or often sensitive to the needs of others, and 34.1% said extremely or almost always. That's 70% of kids reported the top two answers to being empathetic to their peers, and that just like that really solidifies it, like, oh, the kids might be okay.
One thing that comforts me as you get under the hood of this report, Hans, is that it's not just an improvement compared to 2022. Because I think the idea of going, hey, are students in general doing better than the last time we asked them to sit in front of a laptop for months on end and never see their friends, never go outside? I'd be shocked if it had gotten worse. To know that we're making gains when compared to 2019, when compared to a decade ago, makes it really comforting. But you go much further than a decade ago and you start to lose a little bit of the impact of social media. Yeah. So Hans, they have some specifics on social media. Can you run us through those?
Yeah, there's some surprising things and there's some not so surprising things. I mean, I think we can all kind of go, to the statistic that 90% of high school students who responded said that they use social media every day. Yes, that tracks with what I would expect. I'm not surprised.
Maybe a little low.
Maybe a little bit low. Like, is that self-reporting a little bit off? 37% of the 8th graders and 44% of the 11th graders did report that they think their use is to a point where they have a problem. So that's an interesting that they know that they do. The one that got into the troubling for me was over half of all of the grades, which is 5, 8, 9, and 11, said that they use technology between midnight and 5 a.m. one night a week. And 1 out of every 6 respondents said they use it every night between those hours, which is deeply impacting sleep, we changed the start times of schools to help with this, and now they're not going to bed in the first place.
I want to back up for a minute. Hans, did you have braces?
No, I never did.
Adam, braces?
Yeah.
Okay. Every time my dad drove me to get my braces, my ligaments tightened every, month, he would go, just so you know, there's no effing way they're going to be doing this in 40 years. There's no way that you're going to be driving your kids to go get their teeth tightened once a month. And same way, like when they would go, would you like a smoking section or a non-smoking section? My dad would go, this ain't going to last, dude. Like you're not going to be sitting your kids in a smoking section. And I think that often when we go, oh yeah, and when did your kids start using Instagram and Facebook? Oh, 11, 13. Hans and Adam, do you think that the way our kids currently connect to social media, and perhaps even the way we connect to social media, is going to look as crazy as a smoking section in 15 years or 20 years from now?
I think it's going to change, but I'm hopeful. What this shows me, if you combine those stats from social media and the ones from the mental health, right? To me, it's just one survey. It's limited. you can't pin everything on it, but this flies in the face of what like Senator Blumenthal from California and Senator Blackburn from Tennessee are doing with like the Kids Online Safety Act, where they are saying all social media is bad for all kids and bad for all of us, and we need to regulate the entire internet to keep any kid from experiencing anything on social media. Which is actually like, it's a technological moral panic combined with what they're actually saying is we don't want kids doing, what one side is saying is we don't want kids to encounter any gay people on the internet. But what this shows is that kids can be deeply online and not have it affect them in the way we're being told it is the only way that it affects them. Being online can be life-saving. It's documented as being life-saving for certain communities who 15 years ago would not have been able to connect with peers or role models or communities of help. And I think it just gives us more ammunition to have a better conversation so that, like you're saying, Sean, in 15 years, it's not about, our kids on or off. It's how are they doing while they're on or off? What is happening to them?
Can we stop talking about this while it's still a win? Is everybody good with that? Like I'm just like, this is good. This is good, and it's measured and it's data driven. I have a lot of anecdotal examples of the next generation doing great, but this is actually data driven. And as you mentioned, Hans, it's even handed. It's not saying the only kids who benefit are the ones where we lock their phones up. There's actually some gray positivity. Hans, I am so thankful that you brought this story and brought so much just enthusiasm and knowledge about the topic to today's episode.
You got it.
That's all for today here on CityCast Twin Cities. I'm your host, Sean McPherson. Hans Buetow, Adam Sage, thanks for being here today. Our executive producer is Anna Weigel. Our creative producers are Adam Sage and Tiffany Bowie. Our audience engagement manager is James Napoli. Post-production this week was done by PJ Shahamat and Lizzie Goldsmith. Our host is me, Sean McPherson. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. Our mailbag music is by Adam Sage. Our ad music is by Sven Lindvall and Sarah, the instrumentalist from Epidemic Sounds via Getty Images. You can get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to the CityCast Twin Cities newsletter. If you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with a snowplow? We'll see you back here on Monday for more news from around the city.
Sean, Marsha Ploward was right there.
Oh, my God. It's amateur hour here on CityCast Twin Cities.
I feel like that doesn't honor her as much. Like, I want it to be a purely positive thing for her.
Yeah, it's not as kind, but it's linguistically.
If Marsha Howard was in here, she'd be like, make it Ploward. That's what's going to stick. That's what's going to hit.
She would get it. If anybody would get it, Marsha Howard would get it.